Hello and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be repairing a guitar amplifier, and this is where the lead has frayed right by the amp and the whole cable needs to be replaced from within inside the amp. So I'm going to be showing you how you'd go about doing this for anything that's kind of similar and applicable. A quick note of caution: if you're not electrically qualified and you have no real clue what you're doing, then I would suggest getting someone who's more knowledgeable than you, preferably someone with electrical experience. There are a few precautions for those that have some electrical knowledge, which is that if you take any guitar amplifier apart, there are usually components inside, and they're usually capacitors or transistors or anything inside that can hold an electrical charge. So you should always be ultra cautious. If you're really worried, then seek advice. But for those of you that have that brave streak in you, then a good precaution might be to wear gloves and avoid touching any unnecessary components, and just think about everything you're doing before you do it. The amplifier I'm looking at today is a Marshall MG Series 30 DFX. And you can see that the cable is frayed on the outside of the amplifier, and it was actually sparking. So when I first turned the amp on, it didn't switch on, and I thought, well, maybe it's the fuse. And then I had a quick check of the plug area and then followed it through the cable up towards the amplifier, and that's where I saw the split, and then I could see some kind of exposed wires. It was actually sparking, so it was quite dangerous. So obviously you need to do something about that. So this is a kind of guide for those people who would like to be able to kind of implement a repair quickly. Maybe you've got a gig that night and you need to get the amp repaired. So this is kind of how you would do it. The first thing you need to do really is to unplug the speaker. So this is very similar for all amplifiers. You'd have to disconnect the speaker because if this is a combo amp, you need to be able to release the amplifier part away from the speaker in the cabinet. A good note here is to get a pencil and just mark the positive and the negative, the red and the black, or whatever your wires are, just so you can identify the polarity next time round when you plug those speakers in. Obviously you have to be able to release the amplifier. Here I've taken off the volume knobs and the rest of it, just so that can be released through the front, and then there are 4 screws holding it in. So I'm not going to hold your hand through this sort of thing because every amplifier you'd look at would be different, but you have to kind of look around the amp and see how you think it's held in. Always start with the most obvious, largest screws that you think are actually holding whichever in, and I decided there were 4 screws holding this in. So what you need to do is, once you've released the amplifier unit, you need to be able to see how the power cable in this instance is held in. I can see from the way the wires are going along into the circuit that they're held in through a series of connectors, one for blue, one for brown, one for green. But there's a clip actually where the power cable is held in, so there was no point me keeping the power cable as it was, so I just snipped it with a pair of pliers, and that meant that I can now work on the gripper part. There's a little plastic grip section that holds the power cable in place. So the first thing is to release that, and in this instance this is one of those that you sort of press down and you can sort of work it free of the chassis, and then it just unclips the other direction to release the wires. So that was the next thing I did. And then what you have to do is have a really good study of the cabling system and basically get an idea of your replacement cable needs to have the right amount of length on it, because I noticed the earth, green and yellow wire in this instance was the longest, so I just measured out the cable going to that point to allow me enough, because I needed to strip the wires and release the outer shielding, the plastic protection, so I needed to have a point where I knew that would need to be cut. So the usual tools you'll need for a job like this will be, obviously you're going to need screwdrivers, You're also going to need a pair of strippers. No, not those sort of strippers. Wire strippers. You're also going to need some wire cutters. The power wires, they're held in like a clip, and that clip can be just released by pressing on the metallic part. So when they're flat, they hold those wires in place. And then you need to strip the wires to length, so then they can go in together and then crimp them together. And the earth needs dealing with. Now the earth in this instance was soldered onto like a hex nut and a retainer. Then you just need to unsolder the joint, releasing the old cable. You can use a solder sucker. So all I did was solder that point, just heated the joint, and then that left me with the original connector. And then all I did was solder the earth to that connector. And here's them completed with the covers on the twisted bits, so you've got a nice stable connection. Just a quick tug test to make sure that they're not going to come off. You know, obviously they're nice and crimped, so they should be on there. So you need to satisfy yourself that they are, in this instance, this type of amplifier, that they're secure. Here's the freshly soldered earth, and then all you need to do is put that back on, put the nut on for the earth, and then next is just a question of tidying up the cables. So I use cable ties, keep the blues together so they're not going to move. I just use small cable ties. Same for the brown, cable tied those together just to keep it all together and keep it neat, keep it out of the way of the transformer. Didn't want anything heating up or anything conducting. And this is kind of like an overview video where you can just see the finished product. So the power cable's going through, it's held in securely, everything's out of the way of the transformer. Everything's out of the way of the circuit board. It's all safe. Nothing's going to come loose. It's pretty much the same sort of job as they must have done in the factory at the time. And then all you've got to do is put the amplifier back in its place. And again, a modicum of common sense is needed just to make sure the screws are holding the amplifier unit in correctly. And don't forget to plug the speakers back in. In this instance, red is positive, black is negative. And then you're ready to go. So I just switched it on. I knew it was safe. I could tell just by looking at it that it was safe. Everything was correct. So I was pretty sure that I could just turn that on and it would work, and it did. I don't think you need a demonstration of the amp. It just gives you an idea that if you have to instigate a repair yourself with a product that the wires are internal, that it is possible to do. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.